that we managed to rescue 8 discarded Christmas trees by picking them up from the street and planting them in our garden. That Zara produces 1.2 million items of clothing each day, and that's only one fast fashion retailer. And that Times Magazine featured the amazing anti-body shame activist and influencer Danae Mercer on their cover, very gloriously showcasing her cellulite. These are some of the sustainable things that moved me this week, but what motivates my guest when it comes to living sustainably? Welcome to This is a Good Podcast for a More Sustainable Life. You may notice that I'm speaking English, which has everything to do with our amazing guests of today. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. My name is Marieke Eyskoot. I'm a sustainable lifestyle expert, speaker and presenter of events and on TV. And from the Hortus Botanicus, the botanical gardens in Amsterdam, each week I sit down with a guest to explore what happens, what you encounter when you try to sustainabilize. I'm not even sure if that's a word, but it is now, I'm going to say. Living a good life and doing good can go very well together. But what actually is a good choice? What works for you? What doesn't? Is there something you're ashamed of, or something that makes you run faster or go harder for a better world? We share tips and tricks, but more importantly, dive into the psychology of it, why we do what we do. And I hope you feel seen in a way as listener, and that this helps you to move forward in your sustainable journey. I aim to make that a bit easier for you through this podcast and, for instance, my book, This is a Good Guide for a Sustainable Lifestyle, because we need everyone for this urgent transition towards a more just, a more climate robust and sustainable future. We need you, our listener, as well as today's guest. And that's none other than the utterly brilliant Dan Karaty. He's a massively talented dancer who performed with the likes of Britney Spears, went on to choreograph for her and for other stars such as Kylie and Sync, and then became the judge we know and love from TV shows such as So You Think You Can Dance and Holland's Got Talent, as well as an actor in the very popular show films. But that's not nearly all. As important, at least to me, is his work to break the taboo around alcoholism and addiction in general. He's written a gut-wrenchingly honest memoir about his life as a performer and an addict, and hosts his own podcast, If I'm Being Honest, about all things shame, struggle and sobriety. He's also a very dear friend of mine, and I look up to him very much for his openness and his bravery, amongst many other things. What all of this has to do with sustainability? Keep listening, I'd say. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for being here.
That's an introduction. Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you. And this is amazing, being in here.
What do you think of our atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. I've never been here before. I was walking in thinking this is one of those hidden gems that not everybody knows about here. I mean, I've been coming here for years and never knew this existed. And this is a good spot to record a podcast. I love it.
Right. So when you're listening, you can also see us on YouTube. You can have a look and see our environment here. It's pretty spectacular. And also we put some snippets on socials so you can have a look as well.
Awesome.
We start each episode, before we dive into, things like how we know each other and all of that, with our sustainable struggle of the week. So why don't we just kick off? It can be a very small thing, something you didn't do very sustainably, or something you did do consciously but really didn't like very much, something you struggled with.
Oh, yeah. It's
you
something,
first.
Something you know very well about me.
Come
and
on.
You tried to correct, and it works at moments, but it fails miserably at other moments. As an alcoholic in recovery, I drink a ton of coffee, and I reach for it at every moment I can. And as I just traveled over here, I had a coffee on the way to the airport. I got delayed, so I grabbed another coffee in the airport. And when I landed, I grabbed another coffee in the airport.
These were all to go,
and they were all to go cups. And you tried to fix this
I did.
by giving me a reusable cup.
A foldable one.
Yeah,
even.
which is wonderful.
Very
and I've used it a million
transportable.
times, but I'm a little out of practice travel. I haven't traveled in like a month and a half or so, which is a long time for me. So getting out of the house felt like a whole rush, and so I just packed my bags and on I went, and I was like, yeah, I forgot that. I forgot many things, but I forgot the cup. And I knew it right away. I was like, oh, this is, and just because I knew I was coming over here to see Marieke. You, and I was like, this is not going to go over well. So 3 cups of coffee thrown in the garbage. And admittedly, that's something I do, more often than I should.
And I'm going to forgive you for everything because I so admire you for drinking coffee now instead of something else. So I can never say, Dan, come on. But then I did give you this little gift as a sort of, small nudge.
Yeah. What is amazing, though, is since you and I sat down one day and spoke about this, and I had my giant Starbucks cup in front of you, and you were just...
If you
I remember you
see
said, you're like, are you mocking me?
Are you mocking me? I did so. And people can still see this because this is the episode we recorded together for your podcast.
Yes, that is correct.
If you search for that, then you can see the way he just chucked this, I think, was it half a litre?
Yeah, pretty much. Whatever the biggest one you can get is.
Disposable cup, and he sort of, very deliberately, like, you didn't, but it felt, no.
It was not deliberate, let's be clear about
in my face.
It was, and I realized it as soon as
funny.
I did it. But I will say, ever since that conversation, I am aware of it. And it doesn't mean that I don't do it anymore, but I do it a lot less. And even when I do get that big cup and I'm carrying it, every time I look at it, I'm like, you're in my head.
You think of me.
You're in my head.
You do drink a lot of coffee.
I drink a ton of coffee.
So you think about me.
Every time?
Often.
Yes.
I'm going to say that's a real honor. And I mean, I'm not about perfection. So doing it less is already a lot better.
And that's one of the points you drove home in the podcast with me was you were just talking about, hey, you're not going to be perfect. It's small little steps to try to, make progress. And I am far from perfect, but definitely better. Definitely better.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an urgent struggle that we're part of. I think we really need to change our behavior in order to save the planet. But also I think we need to look at the combination of small steps and making change, but also how that changes your entire mindset. And we'll get into that, I think, a little bit, because it's not just about the cups. It's about society and about culture change and larger steps and how to be a part of that as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I need to also share a struggle each week because you're saying, I'm not perfect. Well, neither am I, of course. My struggle this week was about cling film. And for people who don't know what that is, it's huishoudfolie in Dutch. It's the very sticky, see-through, very annoying plastic things that you wrap around.
Yeah, we call that saran wrap.
Saran wrap.
Yeah.
Okay, cling film. I mean, I hate this. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's completely awful. And it's also very unsustainable because you cannot use it twice.
No.
I mean, I cannot even, who can use that once? Even that stuff. I don't know how to deal with it.
It drives me mad. I'm the one you slides out of the button and you try to rip it.
And it's already tangled.
I end up crumbling it up, throwing it away, get to the next one.
There you go. So I don't use it. I don't have it in my home because I just can't. It drives me insane. The reason it was a struggle for me this week, you know this about me already. I'm a very avid walker. So I go on early morning walks every morning. I really enjoy walking. It's a big part of my life. And I sustained an injury to my foot, which is very frustrating to me. We can get into all of that. Let's just not do that. That's also a struggle. So I went to the physiotherapist and he taped my foot. And that was already a big relief. That was great. And he was like, so, okay, I'd like for you to have this tape on for at least 5 days, which means that when you go into the shower, you put some cling film around it so you can seal it and it won't get wet. And I was very going like, yes, of course, absolutely, will do. And in my head thinking, no, not a chance, because I hate the stuff. I don't have it. So, and I'm quite stubborn with that. And I've been here before because it's more often that you can't, be in the shower with maybe something like a cut or a wound. And what I do is I grab a plastic bag that I maybe have in the house that I maybe use to freeze things in, something like that when you've got leftovers.
Yeah.
That's what I grab. I stick my foot in it, get a rubber band, wrap it around my ankle to try and seal it. You're like, yes, that's what you do. Doesn't work. Not for me. So I'm in the shower trying to hop around like on one leg to not get your foot or in the stream, right?
I'm getting a visual here.
Somehow that makes it even worse. It makes it worse. So I'm sort of, risking my own life, literally, trying to not fall over. And the bag just slowly fills with water, right? So I have this sort of food bag stuck to my foot, filled with water. It's not good. I should have gotten some cling film or something like that. Mm-hmm. So physio, Hilke, I've been with this physio for a long time. If you're listening, you can maybe hear what I do a lot for you. I really do. Just not cling film. I almost died, and this better heal fast is really what I'm saying. Yeah. So that was my
It's a dilemma.
It
right
was.
there.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. That's living sustainably for you.
Yeah.
Right. I was thinking about how we met. Mm-hmm. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Quite well.
Quite well?
Yeah. God.
This is probably, I'm going to say, because I just had my book out. We were in a TV show together as guests, and we were picked up, both of us were being picked up from Amsterdam. So, and it's funny because they asked me to come to the show and they recorded it quite far away, and I don't drive. So it was difficult to get to by public transport. And so I said, I don't have time. I need to finish this book. So I can't come. And they were like, what? And I was like, no, sorry. It'll take the entire day. I just don't have it. And then they rang me back and they said to me, we're picking up Dan Karaty by car. Would you want to, drive? I'm like, yes, I'm in. Hello. Yes. Where? When? When do you need me? So that's how that happened. And we were in a car together driving to Behaviour Live. For those people who still remember, that was like the afternoon version of Coffee Dates that we did. Yeah. And you were in that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was in a way different spot at that point. So I didn't like small talk, right? This is when I was in active addiction. So small talk was not my thing. Now I could go on that show and I don't even remember what I was promoting at that time, but whatever I was promoting, say action and I can sit there and I'll promote and I'll say everything I'm supposed to say. And then I'm out of there and back to the hotel. But the small talk before the show, after the show, whatever is not what I wanted to do. And I was not good at and didn't feel comfortable with. So now I was going to be in a car. And, please don't take this personally because it's going to sound awful, but to me, that's trapped. I felt trapped in that car with you. Now, my manager, Michael, was with us. So he became the buffer. And you and Michael got along famously. You were the best of friends, chatting away. And I was actually sort of happy about that because it took all the pressure off of me. I got to sit silent. But, in retrospect, it's like a microcosm of how my life worked. It's like you were trying to engage me in a very nice, sweet way, and I was giving you nothing back. I would answer your questions and try to end the conversation. Mm-hmm. So we did not get off on the best foot there. I think we had an okay time because we got on the show and you and I actually had a bit of back and forth on the show.
There was some banter there for sure.
Because that's where I turned on and was able to do it. But in the car, when I would really be able to make a connection with someone, with you, I couldn't do it. And I didn't want to do it.
And yet, here we are. Right? Yeah. Because through all of that and through, being distracted probably by, wanting to be somewhere else, doing other things, clearly, there was still something there that sort of, sparked something. On the way back, especially, we were sort of, because we'd already gone through the whole, we're at the table together. We were, making fun about the fact that you fly quite a bit, which we will. At some point, probably
I think it might come up.
It might come up today as well. So we were talking about that, laughing, having fun, and we sort of broke the ice a little bit, especially also on the way back. I think we were way more connected in that sense. Because something happened there as well, which you may not remember, but I remember very, very vividly. You were working on Dance, Dance, Dance at that time. which was one of my favorite shows ever in the entire world. And I loved the premise there that you would have someone on who is well known. And remember, I wasn't on telly at that point yet. I was, maybe in some circles, a little bit well known for the fact that I was a sustainability expert and writing books and appearing in television shows to talk, about tips and tricks as an expert. But I didn't have like my own place there yet. Yeah. And the premise of that show was that there would be a famous person who would take part and learn to dance and learn from all these professionals with someone they knew personally, not necessarily two celebs at the same time. Now, Patrick Martens, who is also a guest in this podcast, he is my neighbour, and we would say to each other, this is our show. It's made for us. It's made for us. You were in talks and you were like, would you want to take part? Because you were like, that would be so great because that would make the sustainability issues, way more commonplace and you could talk about that in such a,
Sure.
with a big audience. And I was like, are you serious? I'm like, yes, I am. So I came home and I said to my husband, Ed May, I was like, did you know what he just said to me? He said, I think you would be a really good contestant. And also Michael was like, you should be on screen. I mean, you would do so well.
He was so impressed.
He was really so lovely. I love Michael. I know, I love you too. Anyway, so I got home. It's like, do you know what he just said to me? That I could possibly be on the show. And he was just humouring you. He didn't mean that. You shouldn't get all wet. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay, no, Matt. He sounded quite sincere. He was like, no, but people are just, he's being nice to you. Next day, first thing in the morning, I got rung by the programme saying, Dan Karaty put you on top of the list. I'm like, hello. And that's not how it works, of course. Dan Karaty cannot just put you into a programme. But I spent the next 3 weeks trying to find a partner because it turned out Patrick Martens, as much as I love him, he's one of my favourite people, had already been asked by someone else to take part. So he was in that series, as you remember, of course, because I came by to watch that series a couple of times because he was in it with someone else. Yeah. And that would have been my dream. Yeah. I've always wanted to be in a dance show. That is just my dream. So I spent ferociously for 3 weeks trying to, and I came up with lots of guests. Also, Tekla Reuter, for instance, who's an actor in the Netherlands. She's also one of the guests on this podcast. I really would have wanted to take part with her, but she said no, she didn't. She couldn't, or because it takes a lot of time, of course. And I was like, I would do almost anything for that.
You would have been great on that show.
Thank you so much.
It was a loss for that show not to have you
that's
on
such a lovely thing to say.
No, but you, as we were just saying, how Michael fell in love with you that night, and what I recognized too, you were just great on camera, and you were very comfortable, and you spoke well, whatever, so it would work for that part of it. But also your love of dance and your desire to be a part. A lot of people for those shows, the quote unquote celebrities, have to be talked into it. Like, this is why you should do it. You wanted to do it, so that's what you want. You want someone eager who's going to really go after it. So you would have been great.
The opportunity to learn from all of these experts, it is unmatched what that would do for you. Those experiences you can't buy that. That is just life.
And the magic of getting to recreate some of our favorite performances. I loved doing that show. It was so much fun because I got to relive so many of those moments.
Yes, and I'm just such an MTV person. That I grew up with that, watching that, recreating it. It's just... Anyway.
Showing our age.
And I'm very, very pleased that I'm 46 and happy to be 46. Something changed. First of all, we kept in touch. We did. Something happened there that maybe you weren't in the best of places and you weren't feeling that connecting with others was what your favourite thing was. But through the years, we kept in touch and we've always sort of had that connection together, which now makes me feel that we're actually really good friends because we sort of came through it in that sense. Yeah. But something changed for you as well, and also I think with your connection to this subject.
My alcoholism, went off a cliff during the pandemic, and I went to rehab, and that was almost 3 years ago now, and can't believe it. And I got sober, and when you decide that you're not going to drink anymore, you think it's just that, right? You think it's, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to remove that from my life. I'm also going to remove the fun from my life. That's how it plays out in your head. But you don't realize that removing the alcohol opens up the world. I didn't expect that, but it changed everything for me. It changed, the most important thing it changed is my relationships with people, starting with my family, my wife, my kids, and everybody I'm surrounded by, but also friendships. Yes, you and I stayed in touch, but we never really connected until I got sober. Then we actually sat down and had a real conversation. But also in terms of what we are talking about here on the podcast, I had lived a life of excess, starting with the drinking, but then with everything else, clothes, cars, vacations, the size of my house, everything around me was excess. And it was in an effort to fulfill myself. Didn't work, but I kept trying. It was like everything I saw, it was this whole, I need that, I need that, I need that. And also felt like I deserved it. I don't even have a good reason of why, other than I was so empty inside.
There was a void there.
Because I was so unhappy that I was trying to fill that void with all this stuff. And it didn't work. And getting sober, I woke up and realized I don't need all this stuff. And it doesn't make me happy. And actually, most of it, I don't even want. It made me recognize for the first time about what's important, what I need, and I don't need to be so selfish as well. It's not all about me, 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 me. That was a wake-up call. There was a lot, but it's getting sober changed all of that for me.
What I think is so beautiful about this is I don't think this is solely something that would be recognizable by, for people who are in active addiction. I think the emptiness and trying to sort of fill a need or something that's empty inside, I think this goes for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I recognize this as well. I think we're being told by society, and there I mean the commercial part of society, that by buying you can sort of really change the way you feel about yourself, about others, about the world, and that you can become a happier person. Well, I think this almost proves to a certain extent that that's not true, and also maybe sometimes it can even be the other way around, that it makes you feel even less fulfilled with happiness, because what are you going to do with all the stuff? And it just it can just sometimes make you feel even worse in a way.
You can't have everything.
No.
If you fall into that cycle of, oh, well, I need those sneakers, or I need those jeans, or I need that bag, or I need to go on that vacation, or whatever it is, there's always going to be something else. So you can't be looking for happiness or fulfillment or anything in that stuff.
It's a distraction. It drags you away from, going inside and looking as to what it is that really fulfills your needs and what they actually are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's...
But as you said, we get programmed by the advertisements on television, on social media. Even, I could talk about alcohol with this. It's like the way television shows and movies and commercials show you need alcohol to have fun.
Yeah.
If you come home after a bad day, you pour yourself a drink. If you want to celebrate a good day, you pour yourself a drink. If you
want to have a great time with friends, you need
drinks.
Alcohol.
They push that on you, but that goes for everything. They push it on you, make you think you need all of this stuff, and they're very good at it.
And then they are.
And very convincing.
And then do not show you the downside.
Ever. No.
Ever.
They do not show you the downside. The downside of if you drink like that, how you're going to feel the next day. If you shop like that, how that money is going to be gone from your bank account when you need it for something more important. But also, I know for me, and I think we'll probably talk about this more later, is a lot of it was, what example am I setting for my kids? Yeah. What's getting passed on, right? It's like a lot of what I learned was from what I saw when I was younger. And then also, all of a sudden I realized, man, what am I showing my kids? one with the drinking, but then also with the way I was living, the way we would just discard items and bring new items in, and what car I was driving. I had an amazing car, and yet I needed another one. Why?
Why?
That started to play in my head as well when I started to wake up and realize I'm not a good example for my own kids.
Which also, I think, played a big part in your decision to go into rehab.
Well,
right?
yeah. When I realized, I knew for a long time what I was doing to myself and what I was doing to Natasha, my wife.
Yeah.
But when it suddenly came obvious to me that this is affecting my kids too, and that they could see it, that was the motivating factor I need to get help and to try to fix this.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Also, where I feel that I could maybe toot your horn just a little bit more is where, you do say, of course, when we were in, that moment in the car when I was talking, we were discussing, Michael and I, for instance, lots of things having to do with sustainability, because he was very interested in, what do you do and why are you going to be on this show? And, he's asking me for tips and tricks and all these things. And you were in the front seat, we were in the back together, so you weren't necessarily engaging like all the time. But then I don't think you give yourself enough credit there, because I think the real you, if you like, sort of shone through there quite a bit more maybe than you even realised. One, otherwise we wouldn't have, sort of connected and kept in touch, because there wouldn't have been anything there. So I think there's a very strong core in you that sort of does want to engage and live and be, part of this life and play a positive part, bigger than you maybe at that time also even realised, because otherwise we never would have made it past that, journey. So I think, I do feel that that's also something that's really commendable in you, that never disappeared. And I think that's just such a strong example of who you are and how strong you are as a person, to then to go and fight for it and go after it. And that's sort of, blossoming now so much. I think that's so beautiful to see.
Well, it's like with you too. It's like I was listening to your conversation with Michael in the back and just hearing who you are and the type of person you are. And I wanted to connect. The want was there, but the fear would keep me from doing it, because there was always just that fear of what kind of conversation am I going to end up in, and it's going to get too personal, and I don't want to go there. So the fear played such a big part in keeping me from doing that. But I knew I wanted to. It's like that feeling was always there.
Yeah, and I knew as well. Talking about more personal questions, let's dive into some of those around sustainability, because we have a sort of key set of questions that we discuss in each podcast around sustainability and your journey with it. First one is, what does your sustainable do? And with that, I mean, one of your most maybe favorite sustainable experiences, something that makes you really happy when it comes to behaving more sustainably, something you maybe want to recommend to others?
My car. My car.
I could have put money on this, to be honest. Go on.
Now, I was always someone who was afraid of change. I did not like change in anything. This is the way I do it. It's how I've always done it, and I'm going to keep doing it that way. And so when electric cars really started to become a thing, I knew nothing about them. I did zero research, but I could tell you that they were not for me. I wanted nothing to do with that. And I meant it. And I wouldn't even explore the possibility of getting one. So I drove gas guzzlers, man. A ton of them, and nice ones, and one after another. And my wife finally gave me a very strong nudge to look into the Tesla. Now, I understand that I'm very fortunate to be able to afford a
Privileged,
Tesla.
yes.
I get that. But I said, okay, I'll give this car a try. And I went and tested one. And I said, this is the best car I've ever driven. This is the best car I've ever had. So I got one right away. I've had it for a little over 2 years now, 2.5 years now. It is far and away my favorite car that I've ever had. I don't even think about the fact that it's actually better for the environment. It's just getting past that, well, this is what I've always driven, so I'm going to stick with it. No, being open to trying something different. I did that, and wow, look at that. It's even better than my previous experiences.
That's such a good lesson, because we get told that living more sustainably is actually having to, live less.
Yeah.
We need to
sacrifice.
We need to, we're going to have less. It's going to be a loss. It's going to be scarce. It's going to be, grey.
Yeah.
Our life is. And very often, with this choice, but also lots of other things, you can actually see that when you start to open up to it, the way that we've been taught, the thing that is normal or the thing that we should do, it's actually not necessarily in our own interest. And life can be, much more exciting when we go off, the beaten path, and, we experience new things, and they could maybe, work a lot better for you. So if we get sort of out of that harness, almost that prison of what we get told that is, what it needs to be, it's freedom.
And the ripple effect. So my brothers and sisters, I'm the youngest of 5. They're all just like me. It's like, this is the way we do things.
Yes.
Right? So when I got the Tesla, they were all like, oh, why did you get that car? Don't you hate it? Don't you hate this? You can't go far enough. Like all these different things they would say about it. One by one, they've all driven it, and they're like, oh my God, this car is amazing. And then, of course, gas prices spiked at one point. And they were all complaining about it. And I was like, that's funny. That doesn't bother me at all. So little by little, one of them has bought a Tesla as well. And I think as we go, they're all looking at different, they're at least open to the possibility of changing. So there is that ripple effect. One person makes a change, it affects people around them.
Hello, Dan Karaty, sustainability leader.
Look at that.
Look at that. Who would have thought a couple of years ago?
I'm sure we'll destroy that in a second, though.
I'm just gearing up for something. No, I'm not. I'm joking. I mean, touching on the subject of privilege, sure, I think it's important that you bring that up and that you realise that. On the other hand, for me, I think it's very important to also stress that I feel that the people who can actually carry the weight. So, of course, there's a lot to say for the idea that, change is difficult because it's too expensive for many people and not many people can afford it, or it's not attainable. But then, it needs to become bigger to become less expensive. And I think the people who can actually afford it are the ones, and the people are privileged in their lives because they don't have to worry about the fact that, can we make ends meet? Do we have food on the table and clothes for our kids? Those are the people that need to start really embracing the change and be leaders here. So I think if you can, spend it, do it, get your cash out, Dan Karaty, and be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good way, I think, to spend well-earned money. Flip side of a sustainable do is possibly a sustainable don't, or maybe a sustainable dilemma. So something you certainly wouldn't recommend, or something that you would like to be able to do but just don't know how. Something that's difficult. Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, the dilemma, how much I fly.
Oh, it's here.
Here it is.
Here it is.
I'm on an airplane all the time since I was 18 years old.
And you're
47. So that's a long time. I started traveling for work when I was 18, and I've never stopped. It started all over the U.S., and then it started all around the world. For the last however many years, it's been coming to Europe quite a bit. But even when I'm home, I'm traveling to California all the time. I could not do what I do without it, though. So that is the dilemma. And it's easy for me to, I'll explain it away and make myself feel better by saying, well, those planes are going anyway, with or without me. So I'm just hopping on the plane that's going. I know that's very short-sighted, right? But that's how I'll convince myself that it's okay. But at the same time, when you said dilemma, the dilemma here is, how am I supposed to do my job if I'm not getting on an airplane? It's not possible. So what's the workaround here? I don't know.
Yeah, no. So many things to say about this subject, right? And of course, I knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. If you hadn't brought it up, I probably would have, or someone else would have. I mean, this is for you, of course, this is a massive deal.
Yeah.
First, maybe important to clarify, you did not fly to the Netherlands to be on my podcast.
No.
I think that's important for listeners to know. We found a date that
I was going to be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
First things first. About the work, the way that you sort of make yourself feel slightly better about the fact that the plane
is going anyway.
If you would not think that, and around 300 other people wouldn't, then it wouldn't. Mm-hmm. So if you change the way you think, and not even that many other people, but only a couple of hundred, depending on how big the plane is, it wouldn't go. So I think it's not even that far off to sort of completely flip that the other way around and to think, if I'm not going and a couple of my friends and colleagues aren't, the plane is not going. So you can make the exact same argument pretty easily the other way around. Mm-hmm. And this is a way of thinking, I think, that's not helping you at the moment, because the other question is still there. How am I supposed to do my job, right?
Yeah.
But still, that is a way of thinking that I think we can start getting used to, that the power is actually yours.
This is when we get into the sacrifice part of it, is there would have to be a sacrifice there. We either sacrifice my job and try to find something else to do, or sacrifice our family unit and move away from the family. I don't know. It's a really difficult one. Obviously, I have not attempted to fix it yet, but I'm aware of it. I mean, people have, for the last few years, every so often I'll get messages on social media.
You do?
Yeah. You know, people saying, do you really need to fly that much? How, are you even aware of what you're doing?
So what do you say?
Most of the time, if I don't know who they are, where they're coming from with the question, I don't really engage it, because that could go south in a hurry. I like to have these conversations with someone like you. And I think I said this when you were on my podcast, because I feel like we can have a conversation, and you're trying to sort of open my mind a little bit. When I don't know where someone's coming from, it could be a dangerous thing to open that door.
Can you take me along in how you feel about it?
Yeah, I think when I get the question, I'm like, oh, damn. Nobody likes to be hit in the face with that. So it makes me hyper aware of it. And it reminds me that when I started this line of work, I loved the travel. I wanted it. I didn't like to be in the same place for more than a couple of weeks. Now that I'm older, that I got 2 awesome kids at home and a wonderful wife, I don't want to travel as much as I did. And so it does make me question all of that. And it makes me sort of play around in my mind with, all right, well, what else could we do here? How else could I do this? But I am not in a position in my career, in a power position, that I can call the shots and say, well, I'm going to do this from home. Unfortunately, I would love to be, but I'm not.
You feel pretty powerful to me, to be honest.
Not that kind of power, though. I'm still beholden on the companies who tell me, well, if you want the job, you have to be here at this time, kind of thing. So would I like to do it in a different way? Yeah, if there was an option, I would love it. Yeah. Not that I don't want to travel at all anymore, because as I said, I love to travel, but I would certainly be happy to do it less.
I think you're more powerful than you think. We need to talk about, no, but I'm actually pretty serious in that sense. I think the day and age is also changing to the fact that people are more, I think they would respond to, also worry about, the future of the planet and us as a species as a reason to sort of try and think differently about what we feel is normal. That has definitely changed. I think a couple of years ago, it wouldn't have been maybe the easiest thing to say. If you now sort of bring that into the equation, there's not many people who would probably go like, oh, come on, we don't have to talk about that, do we? Right. I mean, the urgency, I do feel, has changed. So to be fair, and I'm always honest with you, I think you're sort of selling yourself short slightly in that sense. So, okay. Is there something, I sort of call that quite loosely a sustainable drive in a way, like is there something that someone has ever said to you or something that you've read somewhere or thought that's helped you change? Like, is there a larger why for you as well? Is there something that sort of drives you to sort of keep changing?
Yeah, well, it's the whole, I touched on this earlier, the need versus want. When that started to become clear to me, I started to recognize in so many different aspects of my life, what do I need versus what I want? I had conflated those two for so long. They were one and the same for me. And I started to recognize there was all this stuff that I had because I wanted it, not because I needed it. And
do you know what made that come about, that sort of realization?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was I had an entitlement complex. And that entitlement complex drove my drinking as well. I thought I deserved the way I was living, the success I was having, all of that. And I say that in a bad way, right? The success, everything I thought I was accomplishing. And it made me think that I deserved it. I deserved the jobs I was getting. I deserved the money I was making. I deserved the bigger house and the nicer car.
And
all of
ego.
It, right? And so I need that, and I need that, and I need to go on that vacation, and I need to buy those clothes. And when I got sober and started to let go of that entitlement, that sense of entitlement, and started to just look around at how I was living my life and what actually I needed and what actually served me, it all flipped on its head. And I said, I don't even want this house. I don't even want these clothes. I am way happier in my sweatpants and t-shirt than I am in any other kind of designer thing that I was pretending that I liked and the person that I was pretending to be. And so everything I do now, this need versus want, and don't get me wrong, there's plenty in my life that is in excess.
You're not suffering.
I am not suffering.
We shouldn't feel sorry
by any
for
stretch
Dan
of the
Karaty.
imagination. But I question, even, Christmas just passed. Christmas used to be disgusting at my house. I mean, just the amount of greed that was involved. Not only was it bad for me, but it was also kind of like, what am I showing my kids? Getting all of this stuff that most of it they would open and just cast aside. They didn't even care. So it's just those kind of things, living like that and like trying to see, well, what does Quinn really, really want or really need that she's going to use, and focus on that rather than let me shower her with gifts.
Yeah. It's a different love language as well.
Yeah. It has a positive effect on all of us and our appreciation for things and for each other and for what we have. So we have greatly simplified from where we were to where we are now. And again, we are living very well.
We're doing all right.
But in a much different way than we were.
Still, is there something that you would call a sustainable, maybe little devil? Because listening to all this, you've come quite a long way. I do really want to acknowledge that. I think in a relatively short amount of time, you've gone from, I'm simplifying this, I need and can have everything, to what do I actually need? And let's look at it from a very different perspective. But is there still something that you're ashamed of, or something that worries you?
Yeah, well, everything in my life goes back to my kids now, right? So it's what am I doing to influence my children? Mm-hmm. I was influenced by my parents. We all do, and they're going to learn by what I do, not what I tell them. So it's what example am I setting for them? And there are a million bad things that I do on a daily basis, right? It's paper towels. Take something as small as paper towels. I rip through paper towels in my house. I can't even tell you how many every single day.
What do you use them for then?
Everything. Wiping the counter, wiping the dog's paws when he comes in the door. Like just, I go
Put
through
a mat
paper
on
towels.
your floor.
And it's a seemingly nothing thing in my head, but there's a lot of things like that I do, and I say, well, what am I showing my kids? And they're going to emulate that behavior. So how do I fix that, right? But again, I admit, am I willing to sacrifice? I go back and forth all the time because I like the way I live. And I'm still, although I'm better, I'm still not, I'm still a creature of habit. I like the way I do things. I'm always, do I really want to change that? And every little thing I do is going to have an effect on my kids, and it's going to roll over into, as they get older, what kind of, impact are they having on the world? And I'll admit, there are certain things that I'm skeptical about that we are told is happening to the earth. Okay. And there are certain things that you can't deny that are obvious.
Do you want to give me an example of
the
both?
fact is, well, for instance, that the earth is warming up. I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Oh, I was slightly scared that was your skepticism.
No.
I'm like, no.
No. So
Okay,
there are
good.
certain things that are obvious. What are the long-term effects of that? Well, I'm not qualified to debate
We just don't know
those
what you
things.
mean. Yeah.
What I can say is that if my kids are going to be able to help in that, they're going to have to do things differently than I'm doing. And I'm not going to make that any easier for them because they're learning by watching me. No. So that hangs over my head.
Doesn't it also, in some way, feel very exciting and empowering that you can be such a great example and part of that change? Absolutely.
And I mean, when I think of that in more tangible ways in my life, like what I've taught my kids about my sobriety, but also beyond that, because I don't expect my kids to be sober, but in how they connect with people, how they treat people, all of that. When I see the impact that I can have like that, yes, the fact that I can have that level of impact on them is huge and exciting. I would love to be in a world where it wasn't a lot of talk and a lot of you should do this and you should do that, and more we're all going to do this. And that starts, you talked about people of power. You can squeeze it all the way down to, like you said, someone like me who can afford the Tesla, get the Tesla, right? So a country like the United States, who is a leader in a lot of different ways, take those steps. Don't just say the hard stuff, do the hard stuff. We say the hard stuff. Our politicians, the people in power, say the hard stuff, but they don't do the hard stuff. Do some of the hard stuff. And I think more people would be willing to follow. And how I said, even me, like being willing to sacrifice. I think if you see other people sacrificing, you go, all right, maybe I can do that too.
Yeah, but then someone else is looking at you to see someone else making a sacrifice. So then, I mean, that's all us. If it's not the politicians or the leaders who you feel are not delivering here, then we should do it ourselves. And I think if you feel that it would help to see others do it, someone else is looking at you the same way.
It's a good point.
I always ask listeners to contribute. And I've got a really interesting, and I think about a subject that I also wanted to broach with you as well.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Here is Sarah Dubbeldam.
Hi Dan and Marieke, of course. According to recent research by Follow the Money, which is a renowned journalistic platform, a part of the leather used in the popular Adidas Gazelle and Special sneakers contributes to deforestation and modern slavery in Brazil. Whoa. So, as a passionate sports lover, how do you perceive the responsibility of such brands and also your own role as a fan?
Thanks so much, Sarah. So this is about research that just was released, I think today or yesterday, about Adidas and how the leather in a few of their sneaker lines is directly connected to deforestation and modern slavery in the Amazon. I was going to talk to you about sports as well, because that's something that we share, a love of sports. You're glowing.
I'm a psychotic sports fan.
And I thought that's also, I think, such an interesting field when it comes to sustainability, because sports has so many ways in which it influences the way that we think about the world, our values, everything having to do, of course, with kits and commercial use of, the sportswear, the brands, all of it. There's so much there. So,
not to mention the influence that athletes have.
Absolutely. So you can come in any single way and you will find, something that has to do with sustainability and change. So for me also, being part, for instance, of a team also has so much to do with what you learn about, being part of a responsible world, because you take care of each other. It's not about you, it's about the larger group. You also make sure that, you leave no one behind. There's so many values in sports that I think one-on-one is what we need to be able to take care of each other in the world as well. So for me, the parallels with sports and sustainability are massive, and I'd love to do more with that as well. So I thought that's also something I really want to talk to you about, because you're into it so much. So back to Sarah's specific question about, and this is one example. There are many examples, of course, of sportswear brands and unethical behavior. She asks, how do you see their responsibility? And also, is there responsibility that you see for yourself as a fan?
Yeah, I'll admit, and you can disagree with me on this. As a fan, I try to remove myself from anything outside of the sport. I watch the games for entertainment value, almost as that's my escape from life, work, whatever. I turn on American football, or baseball with my son, things like that, and I just watch for the joy of watching the game and the competition and to root for our teams. I try not to conflate that with anything beyond just watching the game and enjoying it.
That's a conscious...
It is, because there are... I can even change the subject a little bit and talk about players on these teams, their behaviors, domestic violence,
right? Yes,
all this kind of. You'd find yourself not being able to watch anybody, any sport. So, right or wrong, I try to remove that part of it. Watch the game for the enjoyment of the game. As far as these different brands like Adidas, Nike, you'd be hard pressed, and I don't know again the research, but I think they're all guilty in different ways. So where do you draw the line? As the athletes themselves, they have to decide what they want to put their power behind and their face on. That's up to them. I think for us, it's difficult because what's your choice? Like if you need a running shoe right now, what's the safe choice? I don't know. Do you know the answer to that?
Shall I put a couple of brands in the show notes and send them to you as well?
Yeah.
Because, of course, there are alternatives. They're just not as big and loud and massive as some of the bigger ones are. But there's definitely steps and strides being made in terms of running shoes. But it's a difficult and competing world, of course, because the power of the big ones is so massive. It's really difficult to sort of, get in there and be as known as these massive, powerful ones who just own and dictate so much. There's so much to disentangle here, right? I think when you are a fan and you wear the kit and it says Nike or Adidas or any of the bigger ones, you're almost an ambassador of the brand as much as some of, the big names are, because you influence, of course, your children, your neighborhood, your friends, all of it. You sort of run around as an advert with these brands on. I don't see that much of a difference. You don't even get paid for it, and you do it. You should get, a lot of money for wearing, and being a running, living advert for brands. I love watching sport. I've always done it with my dad, who's not around anymore to sort of do that with. But I've grown up with watching sports, playing sports, going, seeing Olympics, waking up in the middle of the night with my dad to, watch games of Olympics that were, in a different time zone. It's magical moments. It's magic. I can still enjoy that and at the same time campaign for change and be part of the change. I think I'd enjoy it a lot more once you know that at least change is being worked on and it's not silenced. We always ask our guests to pass on a question to one of their fellow guests on this podcast. You've received one from Chef and my fellow Binnenstebuit or Inside Out presenter, Nadia Zerouali. It's about food.
Oh boy.
Then, are there foods that you don't eat anymore or do eat for just being more sustainable?
No. However, I eat a lot less red meat now.
So that's a yes.
But it's not in an effort to be sustainable. I can be honest about that. It's about how it makes me feel. If I eat too much red meat, I feel it in my back. And if I have a good steak one night, I will feel it the next day when I work out. So I haven't completely cut it out of my diet, but I'm never seeking it out anymore. Where I used to eat steak a couple nights a week, burgers on the weekend, all that kind of stuff. And I don't do any of that anymore.
But this is a sweet spot, right? So wouldn't it be awesome to find food choices that make you feel better and are also better for the world?
Yeah. And even, we talk about the changes in your life that you make since getting sober. I've cut out so much crap that I eat, processed stuff, and much healthier, take much better care of myself. So everybody around me does the same thing. I think it benefits all of us.
But in that, it feels like you're probably already impacting the earth a lot less as well.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think just what you see, what we bring home from the grocery store and how different it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a world of difference.
I'm just thinking in opportunities, as you know, that's my favorite thing. There's so much out there in terms of research on, eating less dairy and less meat and how that also impacts in a positive way your performance and your health and all of that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I cut those things out of my diet and I immediately feel better.
And so does the world.
Win-win.
So you say no, but it feels like it's like, yes, it's also something that you could explore more, I feel.
Yeah.
Passing on questions, what would you like to know from presenter, actor and musician Erik Kortom?
Yeah, well, Erik is a fellow sober guy, and I think 2016 is when he got sober, I read, which is awesome. Good for him. So much like me, I'm very curious about how his sobriety changed the way he looks at, for instance, for me, it changed my entitlement and so my need for excess. And I'm wondering what impact getting sober had for him in, how he consumes things around him, clothes, cars, food, whatever it may be.
So interesting. I can't wait to hear that. I'll ask him. And if you want to know the answer, do listen to the episode with Erik Kortom.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We've come to the end. Is there anything that you're going to take away from this conversation? Something you'd like to maybe get into more, something you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think every time I sit and have a conversation with you, whether it's on the record or off the record, we always get into things and you make me think about choices. I'm thinking about everything that we talked about, of course. But one of the things that was one of the last things we covered was about sports and brands. And, while we were talking about that, I was sitting there thinking about, God, like everything I wear has a Nike or Adidas or something symbol on it. And I'm not saying that I'm going to cut that out. I'm just saying maybe wake up a little bit more and be aware of what I'm wearing or what I'm purchasing or what I'm endorsing. It's definitely something I'll take with me today. The biggest thing is not being afraid of change.
Yeah.
Right? And I always was for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm not now. And I'm not saying I'm going to take everything on, but I'm not afraid to be open-minded and at least look at the possibilities.
Thank you so much. And if people now think, and I'm convinced they will, that Dan Karaty guy is cool, I want to, know all about him. Where can people follow you? Is it at Dan Karaty on Instagram? Is that the best way?
Yeah, Dan Karaty on Instagram, Dan Karaty Official on TikTok, and my podcast, if I'm being honest. That's probably where you get the most inside stuff. Yeah. Just a real look at my life and the guests as well, like the one I had with you.
One of my big dreams is to at least at some point dance with you. So we might even make a TikTok once. Who knows? That would just be amazing. Head to the show notes, I'd say, also everyone who's listening, and I'll put links to all of this there and also to your book, which is a real recommendation. This is a good podcast for a more sustainable life for this week from the Hortus Botanicus in Amsterdam, one of the oldest botanical gardens in the world, with a collection of plants from all over the world. Here you can experience how special but also how vulnerable nature is, what plants can teach us and how crucial they are for all life on Earth. A pretty magical place, don't you think?
Absolutely. Incredible.
Until the next good podcast, let us know if you agree. You can rate us and leave a review on Spotify, Google Podcasts, now YouTube Music probably, or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And please subscribe if you want to hear more. All of that helps so much and makes the algorithms recommend us more. If you want to do something good, do this. Thank you so much. If you want to ask something, have an idea or feedback, send me an email at goedepodcast@gmail.com or find me on Instagram as well, Marieke Eyskoot. Thank you so much for listening and your support for a more sustainable world. This podcast was made by Max van Nieveld. He's both the sound designer and video engineer, so without him, you wouldn't hear or see this at all. Ruud Hermans gave us fantastic audio advice. Edmee Koorstra worked on the cool theme music. Barbara van Amersfoort and Willeke de Vlierhaar are the heroes of the Hortus who helped make this possible. And I was responsible for the content, the production and presentation, so many thanks to me too. Dan, that was it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.